What is up, everyone? I'm Ryan from Fireside Knicks this time. I'm here with Dylan. We're going to talk about the Knicks because their second half is really exciting. The Knicks are in the middle, not just a playoff hunt. They're not just hunting for a play-in spot or, to maybe make the playoffs. They're right in the thick of it. They're currently the 6th seed, and they look in pretty good shape. The addition of Josh Hart has helped this team a lot. They went on a 3-0 run after acquiring Hart. Jalen Brunson has continued his amazing scoring streak. With the new, or not new, it's this year, at this point, it's kind of known, the play-in rules. Being the 6th seed is a huge advantage because you no longer have to play those do-or-die play-in games to get into the postseason. Your playoff spot is secured. So that 6th and 7th seed, there's a huge gap between them in terms of what it means for your season. And the Knicks are right in the heat of that battle. So we've got about 20 games left in the season. These are going to be the biggest 20 games the Knicks have played really in 2 years since their last playoff run when they went as the 4th seed into the postseason. But before we get into everything today, Dylan, how are you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing great, man. Thank you for having me come on. I just want to talk some Knicks and let's get right into it. You mentioned the sixth seed battle. So, obviously right now we have Brooklyn as the 5th seed, the Knicks are the 6th seed, and Miami's 7th seed, right? They're about each game separated apart from one another. And, if you look at their strength of schedule the rest of the way, they all got about the same type of strength of schedule the rest of the way. They basically have like around the same win percentage they're going against. Like, I think each of their opponent is having like a 500 win percentage way, like each opponent, and they each got about 23 games left. So, needless to say, it's going to be a dogfight for that 6th seed. And it's also worth mentioning that the Knicks are going to play the Heat another 3 more times throughout the rest of the season, and they also play Brooklyn another time. So we're definitely going to see some movement around that as the season comes to a close, but it's definitely going to be close. The Heat just added Kevin Love, and Brooklyn obviously looks completely different now than it did before the trade deadline. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see what happens as the season comes to a close. We're going to see a lot. We're going to see a lot happen for sure.
Yeah, and the Knicks have to actually add to their roster, so it'll either be keeping one of the guys who are on a 2-way contract kind of permanently with the NBA team, or potentially adding from guys who have either their contract spot out, or 2 have remained free agents throughout the season so far. But as you mentioned, one thing that the Knicks really have going for them is the Heat and Nets either didn't improve or got worse. Right? Kevin Love as an addition. Not saying
Right,
Kevin Love is an
right.
awful player, but I wouldn't really sit here and say Kevin Love is a difference maker or is a ceiling raiser. The Knicks have gone on a pretty good
No.
stretch without Mitchell Robinson, and adding Mitchell Robinson back to this rotation alongside the addition of Josh Hart is definitely the biggest, most meaningful upgrade any of these 3 teams have made. And really, the distance between Miami and the Hawks kind of feels like it's large enough where you feel comfortable enough to say it's really down to you, the Heat and the Nets, for those final 2, locked in playoff spots, not having to play the play-in. This isn't to say that, the Knicks should just completely ignore the Hawks and that the Hawks have no shot. They just fired their head coach. Perhaps that caused a little bit of a surge here. They're only 3 games back in the loss column. But when we're looking at, kind of the competition around the Knicks are that team in that kind of tier of teams that they aren't necessarily going to contend for the championship, but they are contending for a good playoff spot. They are the team I think that's made the most improvements at the deadline. I can sit here and dissect every single roster, but end of the day, I think you agree with me here. The Knicks they're on a roll, man, and they've made the right additions. Jalen Brunson has been absolutely
Oh yeah.
spectacular. Whether it's the All-Star snub, whether you want to go as
Yes.
back as just February or just the start of the new year, he's been on an unbelievable scoring tear. He's been one of the best offensive players in the NBA this season. Dylan, kind of take us through, where you see Jalen Brunson kind of, at least this year, where does he rank amongst guys in the East, and how important has Jalen Brunson been to this team's surge lately?
Right, right. So Brunson's been phenomenal. I think we can all imagine that. When we signed him, everyone said, "Oh, it's an overpay, it's an overpay." But right now, he's making it look like a bargain. He's been playing phenomenal. Right now in his last 10 games, he scored at 25 points in 9 of them. And the one game he didn't score twice, he scored 21. So, and the fact that we're considering that like a down night, that's a big sign for how much of an impact scoring he's bringing. He's averaging 24 and 7, so he's dishing the ball really well. He's scoring the ball great, and his efficiency is off the charts. I just want to mention this stat here. Since January 1st, so since the calendar turned, this is a 22-game stretch. He's averaging 29 points, 4 rebounds, 5 assists. He's shooting 51.5% from the field and 46% from three. He's shooting like the lights out. He's like phenomenal efficiency wise. He's basically doing it all. He's becoming really one of the best 3-level scorers in the NBA because like you mentioned, he's very effective in the mid range. He's becoming really effective at the 3-point shot. And he's hitting his free throws. He had that big free throw streak early in the season. So he's been phenomenal, and like where he ranks among East players, he's becoming really like a top 5 guard honestly in the East, but he's becoming like a top 10 guard in the NBA almost because of how effective he is scoring. He's easily now one of the best scorers overall in the NBA. If we're talking about numbers and efficiency, he's been brilliant. He's just doing everything right. Basically, everything that the Knicks needed, he's doing it, and he's getting the job done consistently every single night. And I think that's a big thing because consistency was a big thing that we lacked last year. We were very inconsistent. Were playing ball all last year, and then we had that big losing streak that kind of took us out of it. Right now, Jalen Brunson has made this team like a completely different team. He's made it a good team now, and we have a guy that we can depend on to close games, to come in to get buckets when you need. He's also, I think, second now the clutch ladder that came out. He's one of the best clutch players in the NBA. So he's basically just doing everything that you need him to do. Like, it's phenomenal what we're witnessing right now, and it's kind of a disgrace that he wasn't an all-star. I would have had him as an all-star lock, but he's been just phenomenal.
Yeah, I 100% agree that he should have been an all-star. And you mentioned the efficiency. Smaller guards typically struggle with efficiency for multiple reasons. Number one, they're smaller, so you can't just drive into the paint and get a high percentage look. And on top of that, typically
Right.
you see that they have to, rely a lot on the 3-point shot. Not saying that relying on 3-pointers is a bad thing per se, but, it does inherently lower your efficiency because 3-pointers are going to go in less than a shot right at the rim. So Jalen Brunson's ability to, perform
And
well, on the mid range, on his
so
floaters.
impactful defensively because he's getting those charges drawn. Brunson's getting those charges drawn on him too, so he's impactful on that side too. And he's never really was marketed as like a great defender. This isn't like Alex Caruso or anything, but this is, he's just doing what you need him to do. He's just, like you said, he's a small guard, so there's limitations to his game. It's harder for him to get inside. It's harder for him to play defense inside, but he's doing the right things given that. And I think that's what makes him really important, and that's why he's easily the team's most impactful piece. I know Julius Randle has been phenomenal this year, maybe all-star team. He might make an all-NBA team again with the way he's playing. But Jalen Brunson he's set the foundation for this team. Like, this team has a good mindset now, and they're led well by him and Randle, really, as a good duo. But Brunson's set the tone big time, and that's what I think is a big thing right there.
Yeah, the establishing of roles, right? That's something that I felt like last year, Randle was asked to do a lot of things. He's supposed to also be the primary playmaker. He's supposed to handle the ball all the time. He's supposed to score all the time. He's supposed to be the rebounder all the time. He's supposed to do this and that and this. And that's just not sustainable. You're asking a guy to do a million things. Randle has taken a step back, quote unquote, in terms of assists, but I think it's a good thing. He shouldn't be someone who's ball handling as much or being in charge of passing.
He has less pressure to do that kind of duty, and having a point guard now is the big thing, and that's what Brunson's done. Because last year Randle had Alec Burks at point guard and Kemba Walker at point guard. There was no consistency in that role. So Randle, like you said, he was asked to do a whole lot more, and he's still doing a lot right now, but there's a lot less pressure on him because of Brunson, and as a result, Randle's having the best season of his career. So it's a big thing.
Yeah,
it's how much of an impact Brunson actually has.
And when Randle can kind of concentrate his talents to what he does very well, which, he's been able to, shoot the ball better than he did last year on more volume. Right now, is he someone who's going to have a 40% 3-point percentage? No, but he's also shooting the ball so much that, quite frankly, you're okay with lowered efficiency because he's a threat. You can't just leave him out in the open. You have to guard the perimeter because of Julius Randle, and that creates spacing. Jalen Brunson has been, automatic. He's shooting nearly 50% from 3 since the new year. So, you legitimately cannot leave either either of these two guys open on the perimeter. And then when you look at the rest of the starting lineup, Quentin Grimes, I know his 3-point shot has been falling a lot lately, but you still can't just leave him open on the perimeter, right? Even when he's slumped, you never know when he finally turns it back on. He looked amazing over All-Star weekend, and perhaps that's that confidence boost for him. Barrett has struggled defensively, but end of the day, he's still a bucket. He's still someone who can create his own shot. He's still someone who can absolutely gash you and drive towards the basket and tear apart your defense. So looking at this team, I think this team was definitely, the starting lineup was good. There wasn't really much that needs to be tweaked there. Barrett needs to improve a little bit, but we'll get to that a little bit later. Looking at the bench, though, they needed scoring. Emmanuel Quickley has been phenomenal for the Knicks all season, and he's turned it on since the new year. But he cannot be the only guy who can create his own shot and play make and do a lot of different things offensively. Josh Hart has stepped in and immediately been kind of a godsend for this team. Take us through what you think Josh Hart does for this team so well and why he's so important to what this team has done lately.
Right. So, Josh Hart kind of brings a little bit of everything if you really look at the grand scheme of things. He helps with the defense because he hustles and he gets the rebounds, so that helps too. But offensively is something I've noticed the biggest change in. He pushes the pace on offense. He moves through the ball very well, and also he's just a good scorer. He moves quick and he finds open shots. He's a really good shooter. And he was only shooting like 30% from three or something like that when he got traded, but he's really lit it up since he came here, and he's shooting like I don't have the exact number in front of me, but he's shooting like close to 60% as in from 3-point range, which is phenomenal. He shot a decent amount of threes as well. You said the bench scoring, quickly has been great, as we all know, but he was basically the only scoring threat off the bench for most of the year. So bringing Hart along established a better bench unit, and now I have the statistic in front of me. So before they got Josh Hart, the Knicks bench was averaging just 29 points a game, which was one of the lower marks in the NBA. If it was the very last one, it was one of the very low marks. Now, in the 3 games that they've gotten Hart, so in the 3 games they've had him, the bench is averaging 43 points a game. So if you take that 3-game sample size, that's the second best in the NBA and first in the East among teams in a 3-game stretch like that. So already off rip, the bench has been phenomenal scoring wise. And Josh Hart has scored in double figures in every single game he's played. So the bench immediately has been much better scoring. And I think that's a big thing to note because we've won all 3 games since Hart came along, in part because of that bench scoring. There's more depth now to this team than there was before he came along. And I think that's a big thing.
Yeah, and he's also a phenomenal defensive player too. I think that when we acquired him, there were a lot of Knicks fans. Not that we're necessarily saying it's a bad trade or anything. We're like, not really moved. Like, okay, it's a nice move, I guess, but it's not going to do much for this team. But I think a lot of people underrated just how skillful he is in the defensive and even on the offensive side of the ball. This isn't a guy you just throw on the corner or throw in the corner or throw on the perimeter and just kind of have sit there.
No,
I feel
like I said, he pushes the pace well on fast breaks.
Yep.
He's moving. He gets to the cup. He gets inside very well. He's active. He fights for rebounds, offensive rebounds. He does everything. He moves the ball well too. He's averaging a couple of assists in the time he's here too. So it's not like he's just getting like empty stats or like only nothing else. No, impacting to win, which I think was the big thing, which was something that Cam Reddish really wasn't doing, and that's why he was on the bench. Now we have Hart, and he's impacting to win. The games played, we have won. And it's not like they've been easy games, but we've won them because of his impactful play. We've had him in closing lineups to come and shoot or to play defense, get rebounds we need him. We don't have Mitchell Robinson right now, so the rebounds is a huge thing. And like I said, he's moving the ball well and stuff too, so that's a huge thing. Basically, he's impactful all around, which, and if he continues to do just that, then the Knicks could really find themselves in a good spot come playoff time. They really could.
Yeah,
because they have something going right here with him.
The way I would kind of describe it is he's been like a glue guy for this team. Him and Quickly kind of, not in the sense that they're the same basketball player, but they serve very similar roles in the sense that, you can throw them in with whoever you want on this Knicks roster, and they're going to elevate the play of those guys. They've done a great job.
And I've mentioned that before. Hart's like a very seamless fit. He could go, like you said, he can basically go in anywhere. He could play with the starters because, he's already had experience playing with Jalen Brunson in Villanova. He played with Julius Randle in LA. So he has experience with both guys. Not only just that, but like you said, he's a glue guy. You can throw him in anywhere. Fits well on the bench because he plays well with Quickly. You can put him in the starting lineup. He plays well with Brunson and Randle. He fits everywhere. His play style is like perfect for any role. Which if they were to move him to the starting lineup, it's a win-win situation because if you were to move him to the starting lineup, you might move Barrett or Grimes to the bench, but they've all played well in those roles. We've had Barrett play in the second unit before. We've had Grimes in the second unit before, so it's not like anything new. And Hart's been in the second unit before many times. He was a starter in Portland, but he's played the bench before, and we've had him on the bench right now, and he's been phenomenal. So, obviously they're not going to change it up right now. I wouldn't think, but you're going to still keep seeing Hart in closing lineups. That's the big thing. He's able to close games. He gives you a lot. So, yeah.
Yeah, and one of the big things here is going to be in the postseason. You shrink your lineups, you shrink your rotations. The amount of guys you go to is going to shrink. And so, looking at Hart and Quickly, they're going to play huge roles in the postseason. As you mentioned, they may not start, but they're going to be a factor in the closing lineup. And realistically, when we're looking at postseason time, we're looking at even regular season games, the moments that, you need shot creators out there, you need your best minutes, and the Knicks are going to Quickly and Grind and Hart. That tells you something. This isn't to discredit, anyone in the starting lineup, but more so to
Their
just
defensive like cohesiveness together is like a punch for it, which is why
yeah.
I agree with using Quickly and Hart in closing lineups because Quickly's easily our most impactful defender, but with Hart's tenacity and like his aggressiveness, it blends well, and like that's a backcourt nightmare really for other teams. So I agree with that sentiment of using Quickly and Hart in closing lineups because that's what you want. And like you said, in playoff time, they're going to be doing that. They're probably going to be doing that a lot, which
Yeah.
I will like because they're that in playoff game needs stops. You can't let the other team score too much because then they will kill you. So you have to get defense going, and I think that's a big thing because the big problem this year was perimeter defense before Hart came along. It's tightened up a lot recently with Quickly's development helped, but now that Hart's here, it really like stabilizes that, and it's like all right, now we actually have a good defensive unit going, especially when Mitch comes back too. It's gonna be a lot better.
Yeah, and end of the day, if you look at if you were to give any, drawbacks to Randall and Brunson's game, you would say that defensively they haven't been excellent this year, right? So you mentioned Brunson's kind of been able to do his job defensively, but we know he's defensively limited. Again, being a small guard, it is what it is, right? That's just part of that style. That's just part of the style of play you're going to get from a smaller guard. But having Harden Quickly in there alongside, as you mentioned, Mitchell Robinson when he comes back, should give them that defensive presence around those two that they don't have to carry much of a defensive load. They can go out there and just be the excellent shot creators that they are. But, looking down the last 20 games, looking down this stretch, the Knicks are going to play very important, meaningful basketball. You've mentioned 3 matchups with the Heat, right? That's going to determine the 6th seed. I think that those 3 games are going to play a huge role here.
Oh yeah.
If you had to pick one guy on this team that needs to step it up down the stretch, not saying that they necessarily have played poorly all year or that they aren't that good, but that they need to step up and kind of either take on a bigger role or kind of, take or continue doing what they've done well all year. Who's that one guy for you going down these final 20 games?
Well, it's definitely RJ Barrett. He's the one who needs to step up. He came into the All-Star break, slumping. His efficiency's been down. He's not scoring in high bunches. His defense has been, not great. He's definitely somebody who has to step it up because, with Hart now here, it comes to a point where you start to question, does Hart need to get more minutes now than Barrett? Does Hart need to play the more important minutes than Barrett because of how Barrett's been playing? And I know Barrett's young. I'm not giving up on Barrett, but he definitely needs to step it up because we can't keep. Right now, we're winning games, but eventually it's going to come back to haunt us if Barrett's struggles continue and then the rest of the team starts to struggle because then we don't have a guy we can depend on. So I definitely think RJ is the guy who needs to step it up big time.
Yeah, and I think that's an excellent point. Number one, he's a shot creator too. He's another guy who, when he's going right, can create his own shot in the postseason. We saw this the last time the Knicks made the playoffs. It felt like it was really Randall had to create shots for everyone and himself, and that's what caused the offense to stall. This time around, they have a diversity in terms of their offensive options, and if Barrett can figure out, not necessarily, being a superstar, I think that ship has sailed. No one needs RJ Barrett to be a superstar anymore. Just be the player you were.
We don't need RJ to do anything crazy. We need RJ to play his role, and we need him to also be effective. If Barrett had 18 points and was on good efficiency and played good defense, that's acceptable. We have enough depth pieces to work around that. We don't need RJ to score 40 points like we did last year. We don't need that. But we do need him to be impactful because right now, if he's not shooting the ball well and he's not playing defense, he's essentially being a non-factor and I don't want. So that's what I'm trying to say here.
Yeah, and kind of like how Josh Hart and Emmanuel quickly kind of figure out ways to impact the game positively, even without putting up, insane box score numbers. RJ Barrett figuring out how to do that because he definitely has the talent to do so, would go such a long way for this
Oh,
team.
1000%.
If I was to pick a guy that wasn't named RJ Barrett, I think the second logical jump here would be Mitchell Robinson, who, not saying that he hasn't played well all year, has been phenomenal for the Knicks. He just is missing time because of injury, right? If he comes back, and I imagine he will, I don't think there's any questions
Yes.
about that unless there's, any unprecedented setback. He's going to play such a huge role for the Knicks in terms of interior defense, man. He is such a good defensive player. He's great on rebounds, as you mentioned.
He was already playing a huge role too before the injury because his
Right.
impact on like the offensive rebounding. The Knicks actually were leading the NBA in second chance points before he got hurt. I haven't checked, but they were leading the NBA in that category, which is huge. Second chance opportunities are tremendous, especially in today's NBA where like everybody can shoot. You want to keep the ball as much as you can and get to your and score. And Mitchell Robinson kind of just cleans up those mistakes, gets those offensive rebounds. He's good on the defensive end, obviously too. But I think his offensive rebounding stuff is like more impactful because we're not the most efficient team. If you look at the numbers, we're not. We're actually one of the lower efficient teams in the NBA in terms of overall shooting. But Mitch has been able to clean up those messes right there, and he's been able to give us those second chance points and those opportunities to get some threes out in the wing on a kick out or put back dunks, anything you could imagine. Really, he's gonna need to play a big role. You were definitely right about that.
Yeah, and end of the day, my final thoughts here before I hand it over to you. I think that Mitchell Robinson is someone that gets overlooked because he's just he's not a modern center in the sense that he can shoot and space the floor, but he's still a really impactful player. I think a lot of people lump in centers who can't shoot with like the Andre Drummonds of the world, where they just put up points and rebounds. It's like, yeah, but they're not that good, right? Drummond, I think what he lacked before was the defense. Mitchell Robinson's an excellent defensive player, right? He's such an impactful player for this team. You have him, and I've mentioned this with Brunson and Randall, where again, they're not excellent defenders. They do their job, but they're not going to stand out in that category. You're not going to ask Brunson to guard your best defender. You're not going to ask Randall to stand in the paint and try to go head to head with a Joel Embiid. You're going to ask Mitchell Robinson, in the postseason, if you face off against the Sixers or against the Cavs team that has some pretty notable big men. You're going to ask Mitchell Robinson, hey, we need you to step up and take on these defensive assignments, and it's not going to strain his offense because his offense is very much just, if the shot is there, take it. If he's got an open look, they'll pass it out to him at the rim, but he's not a focal point of the offense. He's huge for this team, literally. And I really do think that him coming back from injury is going to play a huge factor in this team's success down the stretch.
No, yes, absolutely. He's going to be like a big time factor. You're definitely right. Like, I mentioned RJ, but you're definitely right about Mitch. He's going to need to be a big one. Because like Cavs had the Cavaliers, if we end up playing them in the playoffs, they have Mobley and Allen. They got some big guys down there who are very great defensively, but they're huge and they provide impact on the offense too. So yes, you're going to want Mitch to have those guys because, like you said, you're not going to ask Julius Randle to do it, and I'm sure you're probably not going to ask RJ to do it either because he hasn't been great defensively. So you're going to need Mitch to do it, and I have confidence he'll get the job done, but he has to be on the court. That's the big thing. He actually has to play. So.
Yeah, and end of the day, this team's headed in the right direction, right? They're gonna get a key guy back in Robinson. I think they finally, this is probably close to the ceiling of a team that doesn't have that, MVP caliber player on their roster. We're approaching kind of that ceiling of a team, where at this point it's just you wait for that MVP caliber player to become available, and then you graduate into true, championship contention. But I think this is a good place to wrap up the episode. Thank you guys so much for checking us out. We appreciate your guys' continued support, and we'll hope to see you guys on another episode. Peace out.